Hi, everybody. It is Monday. Happy Monday to you. And thank you for joining us for another Mondays Live with Elle and Janus. I am Elle Cole from the blog cleverlychanging.com. And my blog is about parenting, finance, homeschooling, and health and wellness. I hope that you will take a moment to visit my site and go to the tab that says podcast. Check out my homeschool podcast, which is really about parents educating their children, not just homeschooling them, but really supplementing their education. So I hope that you will share this podcast or this episode, this show with a friend, and let them know that we talk about current events from an intergenerational perspective. So
Yes.
thank you again for joining us.
And hi, I'm Janus Adams. My website is janusadams.com. I'm an author and historian, a journalist. I host my own radio show and podcast. And my theme has been history, heritage, healing, and hope. And so that's the journey I'm on, and that's the journey that I share with my listeners and readers. And I want to point out to you the show that ran this past Saturday, but that is running as a podcast all this week and will be featured as a podcast this week. When you click on the show tab, it will take you to those places, but this one will be featured. And I'm mentioning this particular one because, between fires in the West, flooding in the South, this particular show is with an African American woman who's an environmentalist activist who is talking about sustainability and food security and, taking it to the next step and how we take as much as we can charge of difficult situations in the midst of difficult times, which I think ultimately makes us all feel better. It's when we are feeling powerless and as though there's nothing we can possibly do. And then someone like Pamela Boyce Sims comes along, who's also a psychologist. So the two things mix very well. But come together and say, no, you can. Not only yes, we can, but yes, you can. And so I hope you'll check that out. But for today, first of all, we have a birthday to celebrate. Happy birthday, Elle.
Thank you so much.
And where are you? You don't look like you're not in the home studio where you usually are. Where are you for this birthday weekend?
I am in Virginia at the Massanutten Resort, and so it is so beautiful and peaceful and calm, and it's just where I want it to be for fall. The leaves haven't really started to change colors yet, but they're still beautiful to look at the trees and just be out in nature.
Wow. Well, I am in upstate New York, and you see I'm dressed with even a high neck on. I see you're with an open shirt, and you're still looking kind of late summery and cheery. And we had frost for the last couple nights. So
It was cold. It's colder here than it is where I normally live, and you have to get adjusted. So I kind of like a breeze. So
mhm.
it's a breeze. So some people would be cold, cold and have on a coat, but I like the breeze because to me it's comfortable. Fall is one of my favorite seasons, so this is just my time. So I'm excited.
Well, your shirt is a nice fall tinge to the color of it. And so, you're saying where you are. I'm surprised because I didn't realize that the resorts were open again and that you could be, um, out and about quite like that. So, how are they handling the situation in these hotels and resorts?
So they do have a lot of COVID precautions. I haven't actually been up close to anybody, any other people. Um, the way that activities are like you can schedule your own activities, and like I know laser tag or like escape rooms and things, you only do them with your party. So whoever you brought in your group, you can participate. You just have to schedule ahead of time. And
Oh.
yes, places are open. They do have a dining area and like restaurants and things like that.
Mhm.
What we, because we do have some family members who are, you know, vulnerable to
Mhm.
COVID, we decided to just rent a house, and we're preparing our own meals, and we will do scheduled activities and things like that, but we're still taking our precautions.
Yeah.
But it's pretty safe. Everything was like they're cleaning things over and over just twice, and they gave us masks and disinfectant and hand sanitizer and wipes. So they
Yeah.
definitely are taking precautions. And when I looked into what we would do, because it's not just my birthday, my daughters also are having a birthday. So it's, I call it my birthday week because it's a
Oh.
week of celebrations.
Oh,
My
how
daughter's
great.
birthday is in the same week. So so we plan we plan it all around the same time, and so that's why. But I looked into where could we go and be safe, and this is one of the places. So I feel very confident and very secure and safe.
Mm, it's interesting when you mentioned this being your birthday week. My family had a similar thing. Unfortunately, some of the losses of family members, but nevertheless, we had, I don't, you can't say trifecta, but it's like five things in a row. October 30th being my wedding anniversary, October 31st, my granddaughter's birthday, November 1st, my mother's birthday, and November 2nd, my twin daughter's birthday. We and I like to point out in that my granddaughter, of course, is the last of those, the part of that sprint, and she just kind of wiggled in her own day and said, I'm not coming on your day or your day or your day. She just wiggled herself in, and she has her own day. So on October 30th, and she will be 19 this year. So
Oh wow.
yeah, it's, it's hard to imagine, to believe, but she is. And she's she is having an interesting year, and I feel so for the kids because last year was her first year at college, and
Mm.
she was supposed to be away I mean, she was away at George Washington University where she's enrolled. My grandson, it was his first year too, and he was at Savannah College of Art. And, it's as though they both had this first taste of adulthood, and then it was just snatched away from them come the into the winter semester and having to come back home. And then she in particular, they were told at George Washington that they would go back for only 3 months because the school was
Mm.
concerned about if they insisted that everybody quarantine, then come to school, then have a modified quarantine, that once they went home for Thanksgiving, there wouldn't be time to quarantine, come back, and then go back away for Christmas as well. And it would just be really dangerous. So from early summer, they had announced they were only coming back for the 3 months from September through Thanksgiving. Then about 2 weeks before they were due to come back, and other schools had begun coming back and the numbers started spiking and everything, they just said, no, we're not coming back at all. So her entire sophomore year, it looks like, may be remote.
Yes,
So,
sometimes we drive through that area and
mhm,
it's been very desolate. And it's usually like just buzzing with students all
yeah.
over. And it's like, you see one or two people, but
Mhm.
it's definitely a difference.
So how are you handling it with your daughters? I mean, they're younger, I know, but You know, it's as though they've been homeschooled for most of their lives, and then they had, in a way, a similar thing. They had a little bit of the other kind of experience, and now is that snatched away from them too?
So yes, so we chose to put them in a co-op last year that met 3 days a week, and they absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my daughter, who has health complications, did get sick, like colds and things that pass around in school environments. And so she did, and so she was out a couple days last year. And because of that, I chose not to put them into co-op this year. So the co-op is still meeting, but they're meeting outside. And I just felt like it would be safer for her just to take their online classes. So they're offering virtual classes. So
Mm-hmm.
my kids are enrolled in the virtual classes, but they're not going to the outdoor classes. So that is a bit of a downer for them because they were really looking forward to be with their friends.
Yeah.
But I just felt like it was safer for us as a family to say, maybe, when things change, we can go back to that. And I know that outdoors is really a safer option, but with her, you also have to, so she has sickle cell disease, and you also have to avoid extreme temperatures. And that was really what
Oh,
caused me to make that executive decision, because I would have been okay with outside classes, but with the weather really affects a person's sickle cell, how it affects their body. And so you want to really be in mild, comfortable temperatures. And we know that the weather is changing.
mm-hmm.
And so it just wouldn't be optimal for her health. And so she is liking her virtual classes. They're doing two co-ops. And so they started in August. So they're still doing their virtual classes, and it's not the same because they don't really get to know the students the same
Yeah.
way. I wanted to make sure that they went to the same co-op and took virtual classes because they already have a relationship with some of those students. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that actually helps the experience.
Yeah.
So that's really how we made our decision.
And psychologically. You know, I wanted to ask you about this. And with this being Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and I know you're very involved in that, what are some of the activities going on this month,
Oh, I would
awareness
love to.
wise?
I would love to be able to just rattle them off on the top of my my skull, but there are really a lot.
Good.
Um, so
Believe me,
the
you know, we talk about this being intergenerational. I hear there really are a lot, and I'm saying good because I know when there really were none.
Right, right. So they're happening all over the world this month, not
Okay.
just here in America. And so I wrote a blog post on my site. If people go to cleverlychanging.com, it says sickle cell, September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and it talks about the events. So I listed September events from the beginning to the end of the month. All over the world, and because of COVID, they're actually virtual. So, and most
Oh,
of them, if not all of them, are free. So if people are interested in participating, if they're interested in donating, those foundations that are putting on events are on the site. I want to highlight one event that I know is going on, and that is the As One Foundation is hosting um, a walkathon, and
oh,
it is a virtual walk. So typically this time of year, we have in-person walks for sickle cell. And so they're doing one that's virtual, and people can still sign up and participate. And, you do register, there's a cost associated with that, but
mhm.
you can also raise money. So if sickle cell is a illness and a health condition that you want to support, you want to learn more about, that is one foundation that you can learn about it. And what I like about the As One Foundation, it really starts with the trait level. That is really their concern, getting people to know more about trait, that's the sickle cell trait, and whether or not people are carriers. So they do a
Mhm.
lot of sickle cell trait testing because for a person to have sickle cell disease, they have to have parents who either have the trait or the disease, because this is a genetic disorder that is passed on from parents to their children.
I want to ask you something, not to, I know that you'll know, but I don't want the audience to think in any way I'm minimizing sickle cell with this question. But my family and I, we were laughing about an incident when my twins were, and yes, for those people who haven't heard us discuss this before, we are both mothers of twin girls. And so we speak in terms of they all the time. We don't, that's the
Yes.
way it goes. We don't even think about it. But when the twins were little, um, the doctor really called me on the carpet because way past the time that he said we should have been, I was nervous about stopping sterilizing their bottles. Way after the time that they should have been maybe even close to walking. Whenever their laundry was done, I would insist that adult clothes be put, because we were at that point in an apartment building where you had to, we couldn't have washers in our individual apartment, and so you'd have to use the washer downstairs. And whenever the family laundry was done, I would insist that my husband and I, our clothes were washed first, and to kind of detox the the washing machine, and then the children's clothes would be put in next, and I asked that that be done on a regular basis. And finally the doctor said to me, Mrs. Roach, they need dirt. And basically he was saying I wasn't allowing them to build antibodies, that they really did. So my question is, when something like that is so fundamental to building one's immune system, how do you deal with children whose immune system would be compromised by something that obviously would be considered the normal way to do it?
So I think every family has to make that decision on their own and what they feel comfortable with. And for me, I think my daughter's physicians told me early on, they said, don't put her in school right now. Maybe when she's 7, we can reevaluate. And that was, they were making that recommendation because of her health conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And many other families with sickle cell disease have told me they've never been recommended to keep their child home. And I thought that was interesting because
Okay.
it was recommended to me by both her pediatrician and her hematologist. And so I think, we definitely had a relationship where we were very open and honest. My daughter has more than one illness. She also has type 1 diabetes. And because it's the two illnesses, when she does get ill, she doesn't get ill very often. And I'm grateful for that. I know that
Mm-hmm.
I attribute it somewhat to, they also had me nurse her for longer than typical. I nursed them for 24 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, so that was a very long time. So she's very healthy, and generally, like, she hasn't had to be hospitalized. And so you do want your kids to be exposed to things. And so you have to I think with sickle cell and type 1, for her particular situation, because it's both chronic illnesses, I think it was important for me not to shelter her,
Mm-hmm.
so we still did activities. We did different communities and co-ops, homeschool things, but she wasn't necessarily thrust into a school environment where there are more germs than normal. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just really that level. So we didn't hinder her from going out at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was very active in church when they were little, and we would go to different events. And I mean, they were just very active from an early age. It's just that it was more of a controlled environment. It was with other people, but it wasn't necessarily a full classroom with 30, 20 kids, because the classrooms now are a lot larger than normal. And that's kind of why. So if it had been like 10 kids, I definitely would have sent my kids. But
Yeah.
that's just really, it's very rare that you find a school that has a really small class size.
I only know of one, and it's a lovely little West Indian private school in New York called Macadamy. It's in a double brownstone in Brooklyn. And, but it is that rare to, we were fortunate enough to find that one. But that could have been a danger to your daughter too, because the it very small classes, but also a very close environment, as opposed to maybe being in a larger classroom where there's more air circulation. But I do hear the nursing until your daughters were 24 months, so they were on your antibodies in that sense longer, to give them added protection. It's just so interesting. I asked the question because, my family does not have sickle cell. And every time I ask a question about it, what I'm getting, and thankful for your knowledge of the situation, but also your approach to the situation, in that I think for those of us who don't have whatever the challenge is, whatever it may be, not just this particular one, but that what I'm hearing is ask the questions and then listen and just be understanding. Just be open to understanding it in a way that you otherwise wouldn't, and I appreciate you're letting me tell the dumb story about, I
It's
think
dumb.
my
I think,
daughters would
yeah.
still have their glasses sterilized if the doctor hadn't intervened,
But I think when it's your first children, you are extra cautious,
Yeah.
because a lot of times those books about becoming a mother, they kind of scare you. I know when I was pregnant with my twins, I was scared about, getting my nails done because of the chemicals, getting my hair dyed, just all these other factors. And I was like, wow, I just have to cut it all out. So I was very cautious. And so I don't think it was a dumb story, because I think sometimes you'll see the commercials. So it's not just you and I. There are
No.
commercials that say, well, with the first kid, the mom was sterilizing everything. By the time they came to the third kid, they were just picking up the pacifier and putting it in the baby's mouth. Like, it's different. So I think there are levels to it. And, if I had multiple pregnancies, maybe I would have done things a little bit differently later on, but I just
Uh-huh.
had the one, so I only have that one experience.
Well, I don't know about your experience with the books. Being terrified, yes, but when I had my twins, Dr. Spock was the doctor, writing and everything else. And when I opened Dr. Spock's thick book on parenting, and motherhood and what to do and what not to do, filled chock full of information, the first thing I did was to go to twins, and he had like a paragraph in that whole book. So at that point, I kind of set the whole book aside, because I said, but this is what I wanted to know about, And so some of the terror, other than the natural terror, I didn't get much of the written terror, because I had skillfully gone into ignorance on it.
Understandable. And it's true. Back then, there weren't a lot of books about multiples. And
No, and in
Yeah.
fact, my daughters, I'll tell you a funny story. And we had said for the audience, we always talk about very serious things. And, you know, I often read from my books, and which are books of history, which have some humor, but, you know, obviously they're history based in a range of fields. But today we had just said, in honor of Elle's birthday, we were going to have a more relaxed, just sisterhood type conversation. So I'm sure you're getting that, but I just thought I would mention it. But a funny story about um, the you know, the whole process and everything else is that I had never seen a newborn until my own twins were born. I
Oh,
never had. And my we did, because I was very ill when they were born, and when we came home, in fact, together we were in the hospital for almost 2 weeks.
mm.
um so we came home to a baby nurse. We did do that. So I essentially got my education from this baby nurse who lived with us for about 6 weeks.
I
um
wish I had a baby nurse.
I
I
did.
wish that were the case.
Yeah, but I
Yes.
didn't have any older sisters. I didn't, you know, I mean, my mother was helpful, and my mother-in-law were helpful, but you know, they were in their own lives as well, and so that's what made the best sense for us, was to have a baby nurse, and so that I could physically heal, as you know,
Yes. Yes.
as well as the girls. So what
Yes.
else is on our kickback Monday talk today? What's on our
So
agenda?
I'd love to talk about, so unfortunately, a couple of days ago, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and I think
Mm.
she was a true icon. And I think for women all over the world, I think her life has meant so much to us, even if people don't know the impact that she has made and what she fought for women. It is worth noting and talking about. And I just want to say, before we discuss just the impact that she's made in our lives, that, you know, she fought so long and hard. She had cancer, and
4 times.
yes, and she had, like, recently she had been having surgeries, and really she wanted to hang on. So I know that people, they're like, oh, so many people were crushed when they heard the news of her passing. And we hear about her last words to her granddaughter, that
Yes.
she wants the court to appoint someone after
Well, the
the
Senate to
the
appoint
Senate,
someone
the
to the
Senate
court
after the election.
after
Yes.
the election, which the very Mitch McConnell, who is the majority leader in the Senate, uh, he was the one who famously denied President Obama's um,
Appointment.
nominee. He
Yeah.
didn't even allow the courtesy of Judge Garland being even interviewed and heard out, Merrick Garland. Um, when and now Trump is talking about, this week he's going to nominate something. It's going to be someone. It's going to be a woman, and McConnell is saying we have to get this passed right away. Never underestimate the value of hypocrisy. But beyond that, before I go into that subject, when I heard it, you say how people were crushed. And I think we were crushed, a lot of us, because of her life and legacy, but to be honest, because of what the impact would be in this particular political morass that we are in. And at a certain point, I did, when the news came down Friday night, I did just say to myself, stop a moment, just stop, and don't go with the flow. of the way we're being, you know, turned and twisted into thinking about everything, and at least give a couple moments to her daughter, to her granddaughter, to her extended family and friends, to people who I'd met her, but I don't know her, to people who really loved her and saw her as a person,
Person.
to her
Yes.
trainer who famously, you know, he's on the video of her getting her through, pumping her up through her exercises, and you see her determination to do it, to the nurses and doctors who really fought their own battles to get her through that fight. And so I want to just begin with the human thing first,
Yes.
before, and take a little bit of time to say to her, thank you for not giving up through the cancer fight. Thank you for going through, you know, cancer. We know it's such a triviality to say it's not easy, um, but what that means to fight it, what it means to hold on, what it means to be determined, what it means to be a widow, which she was for
Yes.
2 decades almost, surviving her husband, I believe, if not 1 decade, but a long time. And so, you know, yes, there's no doubt about the political implications, but I think I want to honor the human first and just be thankful for the life that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, notorious RBG,
Yes. Yes.
and her sense of humor, because that comes as a spin-off from the notorious BIG, the
BIG.
rapper. And
Yes.
she would say, well, we have a lot in common. And then people would look at her like this, and she'd say, we're both from Brooklyn, you know. And she would go on from there. So I think I almost want to, you know, with our other hats, we're going to discuss the politics of it all, but I kind of want to go out in my head with seeing her pumping iron as an
Yes.
80-something-year-old, and really holding on to do that, and to, with my other image of her being one that many of us are familiar with. um so many of us would not have the opportunity to, even if we had the grit and the tenacity, only one person got the opportunity that she got, and she seized it and used it well and tried to use it to the greater good rather than to who she could strike out. She tried to use it, and you can see it in her dissents to Supreme Court decisions that had everything to do with power and very little to do with human rights. And you can see it in those dissents that she decided that she would use her singular opportunity to uplift others who didn't have the opportunity. So I think I want to.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that because when I heard the news, I thought about her as a mom. And, you know, she was someone that people loved intimately. Her family knew her. It's, you know, she does seem like a larger than life figure to me, someone who didn't know her. But to her family, she was mom. She was just a different person, just like we love our moms. She was that mom that they loved. And so I think it's very fitting to think on that because I think, you know, there's something beautiful about
Yeah.
a mother who worked hard for her own children and others as well. So she was mothering us all in different ways.
In different ways, you know, and I know you don't put yourself in that category, but I'm going to. I think that is a model of uplift that we all can take courage from. And I do see it, just like she said that, you know, she and Notorious B.I.G. had a lot in common. I think you two have a lot in common with the work that you began doing for thinking of yourself and your own family and your daughter, and then leveraging that into being that advocate mom, that activist mom for families across the board with sickle cell. So on your birthday, we thank Ruth Bader Ginsburg and we salute you. And you have a happy, happy birthday week for the family. And please, before we go, hold up your book one more time so people can see what we're talking about.
But this is my book here. I travel with it everywhere I go.
Good, good, good. It is the Sickle Cell Coloring Book. That's what it is, and it is available on Amazon, and you can find it also on her website, cleverlychanging.com. So for today, I'm Janus Adams of janisadams.com, and back to my co-host.
And I'm Elle Cole. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.